Welcome to the Self-Defense Warrior Podcast, where our hosts, Jeffrey Wilson and Pat Militich, probe the minds of experts from a vast spectrum of knowledge on how to best prepare for the inevitable emergency situation to come. Jeffrey and Pat in the Self-Defense Warrior Podcast are your insurance policy moving forward. And now, here they are, the hosts of the Self-Defense Warrior Podcast, Jeffrey Wilson and Pat Militich.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are locked and loaded, ready to go with another episode of the Self-Defense Warrior Podcast. Rolling shotgun, as always, with me is UFC Hall of Famer, trainer of champions, eater of worlds, Patrick J. Militich. Patrick, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing good. Let's get rolling, brother.
All right. Well, today we have a returning guest, Boone Cutler, retired sergeant in the U.S. Army. He has co-written a book with his co-author, General Michael Flynn. You've met Boone before in another episode, but General Michael Flynn here will break down a little bit about him. He's retired Army general with over 33 years of service in the United States military and a chairman of America's Future, a 501c3 nonprofit. His military career culminated as Director of Defense Intelligence at the DIA and as the nation's highest-serving military intelligence officer. After retiring from the Army in 2014 as a private citizen, General Flynn went on to serve in a variety of businesses and educational and nonprofit roles to include supporting veterans organizations around the country, something he continues to do to this day. His public service included a selection and service as a foreign policy advisor to several Republican U.S. presidential candidates, 2016, and subsequent appointment and service as the national security advisor to the 45th president of the United States of America. General Flynn is a best-selling author, holds 3 master's degrees, and a recipient of numerous military and intelligence and law enforcement awards. He is married with 2 sons and has several grandchildren. Gentlemen, welcome to the show this morning. Good morning. How's everybody doing?
Morning.
Great, Jeffrey. Thanks. I'm going to have to join the Moose Lodge obituary.
Well, Boone was so gracious to mention, when he was on, you guys have written a book called A Citizen's Guide to Fifth Generational Warfare. Pat, for so many years, have been talking about, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, certain other terms, asymmetrical warfare, nonlinear warfare, and you guys are talking about fifth generation warfare, which kind of has a connotation that there were 4 other stages of warfare before that. If you guys don't mind, kind of break that down. What were the previous 4 stages that has led up to our 5th generation? Either one of you guys.
Sir, you want me to take that one?
Yeah, why don't you jump in, Boone?
I'll hit the lean fruit for us. There's a little bit of discussion about which one, where does first start and end, second end, beginning and end in between the stages. There's a little bit of a people are they say it's different things, but in the general context, the bottom line is you're going to see first generation warfare pre-gunpowder. That's when people are just slugging it out with swords and knives and just beating each other to hell right there on the battlefield. And then we got second generation. Now we're going into post gunpowder. Now people are actually shooting each other. They're jumping into trenches. They're actually learning formations and things of that nature. We get generation warfare. Now we're talking about adding some fuel to the fire, some gasoline. We're talking about flying objects. We're talking about tanks. We're talking about things like the machine gun. Then we get into 4th generation warfare. Now we're talking nuclear war. Now we're talking more stuff, just bigger. 4th generation. We're also talking about state, non-state actors doing things like terrorism, things like that. Then we get into 5th generation of war. And just like we have generations of people, like we've got boomers, we've got millennials, we've got Gen Xers, Gen Zers. Well, that's what all these generations kind of fall into from beginning. And now we're kind of in the newest stage, that newest era. And that's called the 5th generation of warfare, which is really the war of narratives and perception. It's what people think is happening, but maybe not be happening. It's very hybrid. There's an element of economic warfare. There's elements of political warfare. There's elements of psychological operations throughout the whole thing. So it's very complex, and it really focuses on the 5th generation warfare. It focuses on the citizenry. It's how to manipulate a citizenry to change the context, to change the lay of the land inside of a country. So there's regulation that happens.
Let me just jump in too. So all that Jeffrey and Patrick that's all described as, Boone was perfect in the defining of the generations. all that's described in chapter 1 of the 5GW guide. The one thing I would add is that on fifth generation warfare, it's really the targeting of civilized society and the ideologies that are inside of that society. And so it's basically, and it's imposing and influencing, what we basically believe. And for those that are fighting inside of it, all part of this right now. We're all, the world is part of this sort of ideological. It's much different, where the previous 4 generations were really all about geography, and taking over one's geography. This one is about psychology, and it's about ideology, about changing the ideology and the idea of what you thought you were as a citizen, particularly in a civilized society, as the United States of America still is.
And the different components, the different weapons being used now, the silent weapons for silent wars, and something that I started recognizing, 2 years ago with the chemicals on our lawns. Even I stopped putting chemicals on my lawn. I recognized that these were very detrimental and harmful to mankind. The agriculture industry, it's just poisoning everyone, and that's a form of chemical. That's the chemical warfare that's taking place. And then the biological version. I asked people who are very, very educated, why do bioweapons labs exist? And they can't figure out, when was the last bio war we had, is what I asked them. Yeah. And it starts to dawn on them, and you can see the fear in their eyes when they start to realize that these bioweapons have been targeting us for at least 4 decades.
Yeah, bioweapons have been around a long time, and a couple of things, I guess, to sort of step back. Chemical warfare. We are under a massive chemical attack. I mean, we're in the middle of a chemical war from China, as an example, and that's in the version of fentanyl. So America is the #1 fentanyl consumer in the world. I mean, it's like 90% of the fentanyl that actually is produced by China comes into the United States, and they do it, without remorse. They do it without. I mean, we sort of have tied the hands of our law enforcement professionals that are out there. And the whole defunding the police. So the phrase defund the police is part of fifth generation warfare, and that is to basically get rid of and eliminate. The intention is to eliminate local policing. We're the only country in the world that still has local policing. Every other country on the planet, to include the United Kingdom, uses national police. So that's the chemical warfare side, and so the defunding the police is tied to that. The second thing is biological warfare. We were just before we jumped onto the recording here, we were talking about the loss of friends, right, through biological warfare, through this the ad of COVID and vaccinations. I mean, what you just said, Patrick, is so right. It's like eliminate all these things in your life that are going to destroy you, that you have control over right now, like whether or not you're going to spray some type of chemical on the weeds on your back lawn instead of getting down in your or things like vaccinations, right? I mean, I think Bobby Kennedy in his book, and I've gotten to know him, he's got a terrific book out about Fauci, right? I mean, he talks about we're looking at children, by the time they think they get to like the age of 12 or 13, have had like vaccinations. I mean, I'm not anti-medicine. And certainly Boone and I, serving in the military, we were pincushions going overseas all the time. But at a certain point in time, you start to say, okay, with the, I have people in my family who are autistic, and we don't have any autism in our family's history. And all we can, and my sister-in-law, who has really taken a hard look at it, she ties it back to these vaccinations. And when you start to study the vaccines, so that's the biological war that we are in. And the problem with kinds of things, chemical, biological, and the idea of influencing against the narrative of we've got to try to protect ourselves, is that we're being told that all this stuff is okay. And we've been at this for decades now, that, it's okay. These things are safe. They're sound, as we heard so much in the last couple of years. I mean, what we are in is such a war of narratives, and people have to wake up And when I say wake up, I mean not just like go and say, oh yeah, I'm not going to do this, or I'm not going to do that. Wake up means go do something. Go do something. I use the phrase, and it's part of my narrative is local action equals a national impact, meaning get involved, stand up, step up, speak up, no more complaining, get off the damn couch and get out there and take what we talk about in this little manual, designed it like a little military manual for people to, it's very, very easy to read. It's a citizen's guide, like typical military guys. We try to operate at the sort of, from a readability perspective at the lowest common denominator. Doesn't mean that we're demeaning the people that read it or they read it. But what we're trying to do is be as simple as possible in defining what it is that we are in. Because trust me, guys, and your audience, we are in a war right now. And that war is a 5th generation war where we are about to find ourselves, looking around going, Jesus, what the hell happened to America? Without a shot being fired.
And in your manual, you've got an envelope, an umbrella covering the names of Soros. You've got Gates, you've got Zuckerberg, and others. And we have to. I don't look at things as nation states almost anymore. These giant corporations, these multinational corporations, big tech, big pharma, have so much power and so much money. At what point do the people who sit on the boards of directors of pharmaceutical companies, the CEOs like Borla of Pfizer, and all of these people who've suppressed the information in big tech, at what point do we recognize them as enemy combatants and start arresting these people and putting them in trials and putting them away, because they're obviously enemies?
So let me comment, and then Boone, I'll throw it to you too. So here's where we're at, and here's what I want people to go and do to study this and to take a look at this, and then pay attention to when they meet this coming month in January. Go Economic Forum, okay? Go look at the World Economic Forum, look at their board of directors and their board of advisors, and what you just said, Patrick, is exactly right. All of these people are this sort of cabal of globalist elitists, and they're going to meet, I think it's on the 15th or 16th of January, for a week in Davos, Switzerland. And this is the World Economic Forum, and it's led by, in fact, organized and founded by Klaus Schwab, who talks about his 4th industrial revolution. It's not a 4th industrial revolution, it's the 4th Reich. And the Nazis may have lost or two, but they seem to be back in control of this new world order, and led by a person in the name of Klaus Schwab. So he and all of them will show up to I call it the sort of the beauty queen stage. So all of these globalists that you're talking about, and others, and many others. BlackRock is another. These are big organizations, and who are we sitting here? Boone sitting out in the boondocks of Middle America, and here I am sitting down in Florida. Who the hell are we to talk smack about these people that are not millionaires? These are, some of them are trillionaires, and so the money that they have, they could crush us like an ant, right? But we have to, as Americans, we have to stand up, and we've got to recognize that this is very real. And I'm not telling people to listen. Don't listen to Mike Flynn. Go pay attention to the World Economic Forum meeting, and they just published their itinerary. Go listen to some of the panels, listen to some of the speakers. These are the people that absolutely believe in something called a new world order. And like Klaus Schwab says, you're going to be you're going to own nothing, and you're going to be happy. And he's talking about that time frame being roughly between now and 2030. And so we're looking at some very interesting things that are going to happen in 2023. The idea of what we want people to come to grips with is that people they've got to be ready, and they've got to understand what it is that we are facing, and then they have to decide in their own little worlds, what things they can control. And because most Americans can't control what the hell the World Economic Forum does, or what this new world does. They can certainly understand it. And then what they can do is they can make decisions about stuff in their own hometowns, and getting involved in school boards, and getting involved in, running on these committees, organized community groups. I mean, this is how this country was formed. It was formed from the bottom up, and that's how we're going to save it.
Yeah, I would I completely agree with all that. And to tie into it, we have a problem in this country, and I think we have a problem around the world, and it's called distraction. We have distraction-itis. It's going in. We're talking about something very real here right now about the World Economic Forum. We're talking about the people that are involved. We discuss these human networks, these intelligent, they kind of keep the whole thing together and keep them on the outside of being held accountable. This whole cabal, the entire thing keeps them from being held accountable, and we should be focusing on these things. How do we make these people accountable at our local level and them out? Meanwhile, we have this distractionitis going on where people, I'll see them on social media constantly talking about the Masons or some Ashkenazi Jew, and they're talking about this stuff that literally has gone on a long time ago, and it's very, very distracting. Whisper campaigns or rumor campaigns that they listen to, they pay attention to, but they're really not doing anything. They're so distracted by everything that is literally, it could not be further from what's actually happening right now in the moment, and it gets them bogged down. It gets them completely task saturated in their own awareness that they do nothing. And that's what the guide is all about. It's like, say, hey guys, let's get focused. This is our 30-meter target. This is right here is the 30-meter target, and we got to start hitting that target really quick because it's right on us. So let's get focused about it. And I don't think we're going to be able to get that focus until we, like General Flynn said, we have to identify the people and the organism and the structure in which this organism is functioning, and get in its craw, get in the way, start creating problems and distractions and disruptions for them, rather than constantly being distracted for ourselves.
And that's something I'm sorry, go ahead, sir.
Well, I was just gonna say, because I think that what Boone just said is so vitally important. I mean, this omnibus bill, $1.7 trillion omnibus bill. I mean, to my count right now, we have given Ukraine $100 billion in like less than a year, $110 billion. And we can't even protect our own border. I mean, we're not even protecting our own border. So the distraction, a massive distraction, and the media, they cover it like they still are beating up, Russia, right? And Ukraine good. We just had a guy in a sweatsuit speak in front of the House of basically give a state of his nation's address. I mean, how pathetic. And so we're being distracted by something that we have no business being. And talk about biolabs, Patrick. Oh my God, there's so many biolabs in Ukraine.
Yeah.
When I talk about like Ukraine, and here I am talking about it, but I don't want people to be distracted by it, because our problems are right here at home. The biggest problems and that's why I talk about America First and all this stuff. America First is not a bumper sticker. America First is a government. If I don't take care of my home, and I'm literally now talking about my home, if I don't take care of my home, if I don't cut the grass, if I don't trim the hedges, if I don't take care of everything around my own place to look like crap, right? Well, that's, you take that metaphor to a larger issue of the United States of America. If we don't take care of our home here in the United States of America, we're gonna basically decay, and we're not going to be the United States of America anymore. And this administration, and this war that we're in, distractions, and they love these distractions, and they continue to pour money into them without giving our own, local law enforcement and our own border patrol professionals and our own immigrations and customs people the ability to be able to do the jobs that they're very capable of doing, because that $1.7 trillion omnibus bill actually takes away money from CBP to be able to do border security, and instead we give I think it's 5 or 6 countries that we gave tens of millions of dollars to secure their borders.
Yeah.
I mean, we are
insane.
nuts. Yeah, we're nuts in this to allow it. So, I don't want people to be distracted. I want people to focus. And it's like I say, my platform, Boone's platform, your platform is a little bit. We all have our own platforms that we can operate from, national, international, local. So I'm going to use my platform to the best that I can be able to get this message out about the war that we're in, the adversaries that we face, that we've already talked about, and then what we need to do about it. But I want everybody to start to understand and start to take control of their own personal lives, and what is it that they can do, instead of just whining and complaining about, woe is me, and be acted. No, focus on what you can do and get out there and do it.
Yeah, and that's what this show is about, General, is we decided that for years, we're telling people what was coming, and then we switched over to solutions. And that's why you're here. And, for me, and I try to get the word out, and I'd love for you guys to share this message as, the modification that's going on across this nation. And all I had to do was call a state senator who's a friend over in one state, and then talk to some other state senators here in my state, and say, you need to Google weather modification companies, weather modification legislation, and what is being sprayed, the aluminums and other harmful substances that are being sprayed to block the sunlight. We need the sunlight to grow food. We need the sunlight to create vitamin D for our immune systems in our own body. But the aluminums and other things that are being aerosol sprayed are very harmful to the soil, very harmful to crops, very harmful to animals in our respiratory system. So they're actually penning legislation to ban weather modification in my state and in neighboring states. And that's something that I think is a torpedo, at least, to get the word out that, hey, these people do not mean good. They're not good intentions when they talk about climate and the things that they're doing.
Well, why don't you jump in?
Yeah. What the most amazing thing about what you just said is that people are doing something, and that's the thing. They're acknowledging it. You're telling people, "Hey, go educate yourself on X, Y, and Z." I'm not here to push you over the edge and tell you, beat you over the head about something. I'm telling you, go educate yourself, and then take what you just said, that they are taking action. This is happening, and I don't think any of us are. I think there's quite a bit of debate about the whole global warming thing. I think that's a reasonable debate to be had, but I don't think anybody's against pollution. I think we all kind of go, pollution is a bad thing. We probably shouldn't do that. And especially when you're blocking out the sun and you're screwing up people's crops and everything else, which is, I think, that's another form of disruption. You whenever you create stresses on a populace and all these other things, you're creating these disruption patterns that really do affect the psyche of a country. And I can see a lot of people are distressed over the current weather situation across our country, and it's like, hey, people are freezing to death in their vehicles in Buffalo and across the Midwest and everywhere else. It's just insane right now. It's a lot of disruption, man. I think there's contamination in the physical sense in our world, and I think there's a lot of mental contamination that comes from the same.
And we're seeing the process, General. If you want to talk about the transition, from capitalism into socialism, into communism, the goals, things like that they're the political ends that these folks are after.
So first of all, there is an old book, and it's called Rise of Communism, and it's about the Bolshevik Revolution in the 1920s. It's a fascinating book. It's a very, very easy book to read, and I read it probably a couple of times now. But anyway, where we are is, people have to keep in mind that there have been competing ideologies for a long, long time. I mean, capitalism is a foundation of our system of government, right? I mean, we're a republic, we're a democracy, where we elect our representatives and then they represent us. And what we have learned, right, what we now see is this thing we call the uniparty. We talk about the uniparty in here quite a bit. I think that people need to understand that the majority of the world, when you think about India or China or Russia, some of these large nations, the Islamic world, I mean, the majority of the people on the planet don't live in a society like we live in. In fact, majority of people live under dictatorships or live under the umbrella of or socialism. And we now know we've had in our own government, we have card-carrying socialists in our government, particularly in our federal government. Also, I want people to understand the infiltration for many, many decades of of these people with certain ideology don't believe in America as we just take for granted. They have been infiltrating into our government and into our systems, the sort of the levers of power for a long time. This didn't happen because Donald Trump showed up in 2016. This is for decades. You can't get what you just talked about, Patrick. You can't get to that level without having planned for it, prepared for it, designed the systems to do modification and such. One of the things that I want people to understand is that the United States of America is very, very rich in resources, in natural resources. Principal natural resources on the planet are food, water, and energy. And actually, we have sufficient resources on here on our soil and in our contiguous waters that could take care of, frankly, the rest of the planet for a long time. Because we're still so creative as Americans, but we're not being allowed to do what it is that we should be able to do, because everything has been exported out, right? Everything has been into these ideologies because it's frankly cheap. Back to your discussion about the sort of the corporate world, Patrick, and who's actually in charge, right? We've got statements out of some of these corporate leaders that basically tout China over the United States of America.
Right.
I mean, and they are about, and you watch, again, back to the World Economic Forum, back to their upcoming meeting, you look, they're going to tout China. They're going to be speaking about how China is the new model for the future. And we've already seen some of this coming out of our own administration. So, one of the things, I want to read this just briefly, because we talk about managing your mind. This is chapter 9. It's great, the great part of it. The way to utilize toughness, and this is something that Boone has really reemphasized to me a lot. The way to utilize mental toughness in fifth generation warfare is for all of us fearlessly to manage our own psychological susceptibilities that make us vulnerable to unseen manipulation. And what's happening a lot is that, and Boone, he nailed it. All of these distractions, these are unseen manipulative operations against those of us that are being targeted, and we don't even know it. So if you realize it and you know it, then you can at least understand what's happening, and you can say, well, look, that's not a priority. That's not my priority. My priority right now is right here, right, doing X, Y, and Z, instead of going, oh, woe is me, even the damn omnibus bill, right? I mean, 1.7 trillion. I think we had at least 13, 14, maybe 16 Republican senators sign off on that damn thing, right? That is the likelihood of that being another nail in the economic coffin of the United States of America is very, very real. And so what we've got to do is we've got to understand all this. We've got to take it all in, and then we've got to really move forward. And you move forward together in communities. That's why during the early stages of COVID, what was one of the things that they did? Close churches, close down all churches. You can't have any churches open, but Walmart can stay open. I mean, all the big corporations can stay open. The liquor stores could stay open, but churches had to close. Why? Because it's a place where people come to communicate and act as a community. And in churches, you can actually decide what to do there as a group, and particularly as an organized group, and you can go do it.
You've been listening to the Self-Defense Warrior Podcast with Jeffrey Wilson and Pat Miletich. Watch the complete interview on Red Voice Media Premium using the link below, completely uncensored and ad-free. Not a member yet? Try it for $1.